Perfect. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to you, candidate Marque Snow, legislative candidate for District 9. We want to thank you, Mark, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meeting. My name is Gina Ragland, and with us today are lead advocacy volunteers Susan DeCamp, Bob Lassen, Danny DeLong, and our state president, Dave Holmquist. We appreciate your taking the time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50-plus voter in Nebraska. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. Mark, if you want to start us off by giving us a little background about yourself and your campaign. We're gearing for 5 minutes or less, and then once we complete that, we'll move into opening up and answering some questions as well. Go ahead with that, and I'll let you turn it over to you.
Well, as you know, my name is Marque Snow. I've been living in Omaha for over a decade with my partner. I was currently serving on the Omaha Public School Board. I am the board president of the district, and I've been on the board for the last almost 8 years and been board president and board officer the last 3 to 4 years. So I've been working, volunteering in that role. I've worked in nonprofit for my professional career and have been working for the YMCA as well as various foundations in the Omaha metro area. I volunteer for mentoring for the 100 Black Men of Omaha. I've mentored 3 young men through that program that are all adults, which lets you know my real age right now. I'm 32. I love the community that I live in. One of the things, reasons why I'm running for the Nebraska legislature is because when I originally ran for the school board, I realized that there was only so much we can do in our capacity in helping kids on the forefront in education. And now I'm sitting in this role where we're reaching that threshold where if we really want to help all 700,000+ kids in the state of Nebraska, one of the things that we have to do is make sure that we allocate more funding to our kids in education. If we're talking about the 50+ voter, who's going to pay for our retirement? Who's going to be the working class when we are retired? It is those kids that are in school today. And if we do not give them a high quality education, we're going to be struggling when we're sitting in retirement, hoping that they're going to be fitting the bill because they're not going to have the means to meet those jobs and those needs that we have out there. We're going to have a large retirement class in the state of Nebraska. We have a growing retirement class in Nebraska. We should be taxing people hand over fist that are in retirement, so they have to come out of retirement to pay for their health care, to make sure that they can afford their property taxes and take care of their families. What we really need to do is make sure that we pump a lot of funds and resources into education and incentivize our kids to stay in Nebraska and to grow their families in Nebraska, and to be able to pay those taxes and be able to fit that bill to make sure that those who paved the way before them can live in a peaceful retirement. I canvassed the district over 2.5 times, and I would say there's a handful of times that I spoke to people that were struggling because of healthcare, or struggling because their property taxes were jumping $20,000, $30,000 overnight, and their income has been the same in retirement. And they deserve better. We all deserve better. And in a state that gives away $500 million in sales tax exemptions that don't affect any of us on this Zoom call, we have to do better in the state to protect you, and protect your children and your grandchildren.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. We've provided you with a set of 3 questions pertaining to what we feel are some pertinent issues to the 50+ voter in Nebraska. We've allotted 5 minutes for each of those questions, and we're going to have volunteers around the meeting that will be asking those questions. Question 1 pertains to helping people stay in their homes and communities, and Dave Holmquist, our state president, is going to take that. So go ahead, Dave.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
A livable community is one that is safe and secure, has housing that is affordable, in other words, no more than 30% of income spent on housing, transportation options that allow individuals to travel by multiple means, and supportive community features and services for people of all ages, allowing people to remain in their communities as they age. So based on that, what steps will you take to ensure all Nebraskans have access to livable communities?
Well, that's a great question. One of the things that we've been on this campaign trail talking about has been what they've been doing in Oklahoma and other states. And that is basically making sure that we freeze property tax assessments across the state of Nebraska. In Oklahoma, they did that. I know we have the homestead exemption, but what you do for a property assessment freeze is make sure that the people that are living in their homes at the age of 65 plus, and we can move those ages there. I'm just giving you kind of what this means is if they're in that home right now, their assessment gets locked in at that rate, that they continue to pay that rate as long as they live in that home. Because if you notice, I live in Midtown, and overnight people are building these new $300,000 homes and condos, and then my property taxes are going up. But if I've lived in Midtown for the last 30 plus years, 20 years, and my property taxes jump overnight because someone next door decides to add 5 different additions to their home, then I'm forced to make a decision, either sell or have to pay those taxes. And if I can't afford that, unfortunately, I have to move out of my own neighborhood. With the property tax assessment freeze, locks those individuals in, locks you in, and it locks people in across the entire state. It actually provides more stable income for school districts because school districts receive those property taxes. But if we know that a significant population across the entire state of Nebraska is going to be locked in at the current rate that they're paying right now, that helps them. I think another thing we have to look at is inflation in the state of Nebraska. Instead of waiting 10, 20 years down the road and then having people's property taxes jump overnight, is to have that inflation go every year so people can see that. It's more realistic. If I know that every year there's an inflation rate that is going to be taxed onto my property, that allows me to adjust and to plan ahead. This is what we need as a state, is to have property tax assessment freezing across the board for people 65 and older living in their homes, and people living with disabilities 50% or more. And I think that is something that allows us to stay in our homes. And when you talked about transportation, I think this is something that our state needs to focus on. One of the biggest challenges for people that are going into retirement, or people 50 and plus, is lack of transportation. And that's not just in the metro, that's across the entire state of Nebraska. And how do we fix that? We as a state have to create a transportation authority that starts reallocating those dollars that we're spending to repave our roads into transportation. So give you an example right now, the city of Omaha, we just passed the bond probably about a couple months ago, almost a year ago, indicating that we're going to put $200 million into our roads. Now, of that $200 million into our roads, not $1 goes to public transportation. Not one extra dollar goes to making sure that our kids and our families get reliable public transportation in the city of Omaha. And I have a plan, or I have an idea that can help us just in the metro. But I think we can do this not just in Omaha, we can do this in Kearney, we can do this in Grand Island, where we are starting to put students that are riding school buses as well as adults on public transportation to get them to A and B wherever they're going. Give you an example right now, Omaha Public Schools, we spend over $20 million a year in busing. Of that 20 million, you will go to, let's say 72nd and Dodge. You would, just give you an example here, you would see a bus pick up a kid, and then you'll see another bus pick up an adult. Those are 2 separate buses from 2 separate funds. What they've done in Minneapolis is they've gotten rid of the school bus, and they said, we're going to use the city bus to pick up that kid, because it's the same dollar, and that same bus is going to pick up that adult. It's going to drop that kid off at school, and it's going to be able to drop that adult off at work. And that allows the next generation of Nebraskans to start taking public transportation. So when they do get in the workforce, it's not something foreign to them, and it allows that bus to run more rapidly.
Thank you, Mark. Nothing like being right on the 5-minute mark. That was good timing. Our second question comes under health, caregiving, home, and community-based care. And Susan DeCamp is going to take that question. So go ahead, Susan.
Good morning, Mr. Snow. Thanks for being with us. Caregivers help older persons live independently at home by providing assistance with activities such as bathing, dressing, and also performing complex medical and nursing tasks, such as administering medicine and wound care. Caregivers often provide these services with little or no training and sometimes little or no pay. Would you support helping caregivers with things such as paid leave, respite services, telehealth, and access to education and training? And then how would you protect or expand paid services and supports, as well as financial security that allows more seniors to live independently in their homes? And I know you've touched upon this on your other answer a little bit with the idea of freezing property tax, but just some other thoughts.
Yes, will do. So I'll start with the last one you just did there, and I apologize that I might have to have you go back through it and read some of the ones if I missed. So
Sure.
with property tax free there, I think that's something that helps not just our state, but it allows everyone that lives in their homes to be able to stay in their current homes. And I think that helps take the tension that we always have in the legislature on, we're going to lower your property taxes, but then we're going to fail because we don't got enough votes to make it happen. But if we can do a freeze, I think that's the first step. The second thing is telehealth. I think we need to expand telehealth across the state of Nebraska. The biggest challenge with telehealth is broadband and connectivity. Your doctor could have the same connectivity that they have here, but if you live in Benkelman, Nebraska, and you don't have that connectivity, you're going to be struggling. And I think that's something the state has to start investing in fiber technology and making sure that no matter where you live in the state of Nebraska, that you're going to have the same connectivity to be able to communicate with your doctor. And if we can expand our telehealth services, it allows people to stay in their homes so they don't have to leave. And I think COVID is bringing a lot of this stuff to light. And when you give me an example of expanding fiber, it's $10,000 per mile to run that fiber across the state. So it's barely, I think if my math is right, I think it's like $400-something million for us to just wire the entire state of Nebraska, where no matter where you live, you will have connectivity. That is very simple. Knowing how many individuals, how many people, caregivers, as well as people living on their own, have to use their technology, their phones, their computers to be able to communicate. The next thing on there is my biological father is a caregiver for his older brother. And he gets no training and no help from the state. And actually, the state actually goes after him when he doesn't file the proper paperwork. I think we have to change that, not just for Nebraska, but the country. And when you think of it, if you're in a care provider, one of the things that is happening there is they're not getting pay. They're not getting the access. And if they have to use their car to take the individual to the hospital or anywhere, that means they have to have their car fixed. And the best way to do it, in my opinion, is instead of giving them additional funds, how can we look at how do we create a different tax and say, we're going to give you incentives. So whether it's for your car, whether it's for your house, that we're going to give you incentives where you can actually have these tax breaks, where they're going to help you because you're taking in a individual where we know as a state, it's going to cost us more money if that individual has to go to a home or an assisted living center. And those aren't the places where we want to be sending a lot of our men and women that have been giving to our state of Nebraska. And if the best way for them, in my opinion, for them to live out their retirement and the rest of their life is with their loved ones, then we have to do everything that we can to make sure that it's not too big of a burden for that loved one to take care of them. My dad has to drive his brother to the hospital all the time, and if his car breaks down, his brother can't get to the hospital. That's just one of the many things there. I'm trying to remember your first two pieces in your question, if you can read them. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think you actually have done a great job on hitting almost all of those. But it was just, would you support helping caregivers with things such as paid leave, which you did talk about, respite services, telehealth, and access to education and training? So if there's anything else you wanted to add.
So with training, that is something that is interesting, and I'm not very well versed on what training has to happen, but I would be open to the idea of actually doing an interim study on what type of training we have to provide across the state, so we at least have a baseline that everyone is going to get the same training that isn't going to cost them any money, but they do know that they have to do A, B, and C, and D, and they have to be qualified. And that lets the state know, and that actually lets all taxpayers know that we're giving people incentives, we're giving people tax breaks, but they are meeting the threshold that the state has set forth. And I think we can do that in the state of Nebraska. If I'm thinking about it, I think Iowa has some standards that are a little bit better than ours. And I think across the board, when it comes to healthcare and human health services, our state, sometimes I feel like we're still operating in the 80s compared to some other surrounding states. So.
Great. Thank you, Mark. In just the interest of time, I think we'll move on and segue into question number 3. Bob Lassen is going to take that question and addresses nursing facility quality. So go ahead, Bob. I think you're on mute, Bob.
We'll start again. Thank you, Mark, for coming. An estimated 6,600 Nebraskans reside in one of Nebraska's 211 nursing homes. By 2040, the University of Nebraska Omaha projects that number will more than double to almost 14,000 people. Due to a variety of factors, over the past few years, Nebraska has seen an increase in nursing home facilities having to close and residents having to be relocated elsewhere in the state. How will you ensure that Nebraska residents receive quality nursing home care, including ensuring an adequate nursing force, education and training, and proper reimbursement?
That's a great question, Bob. My in-laws had to put all their parents in a nursing home, and it was a struggle. My father-in-law, he had to put his mother and his father, they're both in their late 90s, had their pets with them. And once they put them in the home, unfortunately, they had to take them out because they didn't like the quality of it, and they didn't feel that they were getting the last, part of their journey in a healthy manner. I think that is something across the state that we have to focus on. We have to raise the standards of what we require for our nursing facilities. We also have to make sure that as a state that we are going to be more responsive in doing checks as well as visits to these homes to make sure that they are meeting the needs of the men and women that are going to them. Now, one of the things that I've been noticing across in some of these in the suburban areas in Omaha is how do we bring a lot of these facilities to these villas? And how do we make sure that people aren't going to be put in a nursing home and put away? And I think that is something that we have to look into. One of the things that I think could happen in our state is that we actually start investing money, state resources into these homes and making sure that we're not going to overprice people and that we're going to take care of the individuals that are going to be sitting in there. And in my opinion, I think we have to raise the standards on those that are going to be working in those nursing homes. And the only way to do that is you have to pay them more, but you have to require more training from them. And if you can require more training from them, then you're going to get a better standard. And when you train some individuals, so for an example, there was a lady that had to take care of my father's mother, and she had a couple years of training, but she never had to go back in to get ongoing training. So when Mary Campy passed, she went to another person and started working with that other person. I believe that individual has to be retrained every time they go to a different individual to take care of them, because each individual is completely unique. And if you're not getting that ongoing training, then how do we know that you're still keeping on the task that we thought that you were going to do? If you look at our teachers have to get ongoing training every 3 years. Our firefighters have to do ongoing training. Our police have to do ongoing training. And I think that is something when it comes to those that are in the nursing field, especially in long-term care, how do we have them get ongoing training? Because some of these methods do change over time on how to take care of individuals to make sure that they are meeting the needs that we want. We already know we have a growing population that's going to be in retirement, and majority of our state is going to be in retirement eventually in the state of Nebraska. And if we can't find a way to make Nebraska retirement community friendly, then what are we going to do? Right now, Nebraska is not retirement friendly. It's easy to retire and just go to Colorado or Iowa. And there's a lot of people that are thinking that, not just with the quality of healthcare, but also with taxes. And I think that is something that if we don't sit back and say, look at our population. Our population is aging. That means we have to have high quality healthcare. That means we have to have high quality transportation. And that means we need to make sure that our nursing and healthcare staff is up to par to take care of the individuals that are going to be in their care. Because if not, then you'll end up getting people like my father-in-law to come in and say, well, I'm going to remove my mom and I'm going to take her somewhere else. And then he questions, should I even live in Nebraska anymore? Because when I get older, well, my son-in-law and my kids have to come get me and take me out of that facility. So I think this is a growing problem, not just for Nebraska, but for the country. And I think Nebraska could be a state that, that advertisement that we have, Nebraska is not for everyone, but I think we can start advertising Nebraska is a great place to retire because the taxes are low, and we're going to put a lot of resources in our healthcare to take care of those who have paved the way and have worked hard for their loved ones.
Great. Thank you, Mark. And we are coming to the top of the hour and end of our time here. And so in conclusion, I want to give you a couple more minutes just to offer your final thoughts, closing thoughts, comments that you might have, especially to your constituency as we move forward. So go ahead.
Thank you. So, I mean, everyone is excited about the election, not just this election, but just elections across the board, presidential all the way down. One of the things that you're going to be tasked with is you're going to be tasked with voting for either the same or something different. There's typically only the two choices that you have when you vote for candidates. And when I say voting the same, is voting what is safe or voting what it could be courageous leadership. What we have to do in this country, what we have to do in the state of Nebraska is we have to put individuals, especially in our legislature, to go down to Lincoln and be courageous. Courageous, proven leadership. If not, we end up putting the same individuals there where we're scratching our heads at the end of the day saying, you promised me to promise to lower my property taxes, promise to do this, and nothing has happened. Why? Because we do not send people down to Lincoln to be courageous and to fight for the individuals that elected them in that sub-district. I'm willing to fight for you. I'm willing to fight for our state. And I really do believe we have some senators, and I will say this, that are asleep at the wheel. Why? Because they haven't been challenged. And if we don't think outside the box, then what else can we do? There's no one else here that's going to come save our state when we have another flood. There's no one else here that's going to come save our state when we're still having a brain drain and we're only growing by 1%. And we know that majority of our state is going into retirement and we're still barely growing by 1%. That means we need more bodies here to pay for the taxes, to pay for the state that we built. We have to think outside the box, and we have to send individuals there that are going to push that envelope, that are going to challenge our governor, challenge the speaker of the legislature, and challenge the colleagues from across the aisle. I know we talk about it's a nonpartisan seat, and it is, but it is partisan when you go down to Lincoln, the way they act sometimes. And I think one of the things that we have to do is we have to send individuals there that are going to be a little bit different. They're going to fight a little bit harder and think about you when they're speaking on the floor. And I promise you that I will not put one bill on the floor. I would not put one bill that I would advocate for in the legislature that doesn't directly affect the citizens that live in LD9 and the taxpayers of the state of Nebraska. And I can tell you right now, there's a handful of senators in Lincoln that you can look at their bills, scratch your head and say, I don't know why they're putting this bill up. It affects none of us. And I want you to think of this: courageous, proven leadership. I've been doing this stuff for the last 8 years on the school board. I've grown into this role since the age of 26, and I want to be able to serve you another 4 to 8 years in the legislature and still get paid no money.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. Again, we're at the end of our time. I want to thank you again for taking the time to visit with us. We wish you the best with your campaign, and thank you again, most of all, for meeting with AARP today. With that, I'm going to close the meeting off. Thank you.